Welcome back to another episode of The Lawyer You Know, and we're back on the Lori Vallow case today. I've gotten tons of questions about her criminal defense attorney, Mark Means. So today on this episode, we're going to do a deep dive into Mark Means, find out what he's about, find out what he holds himself out to be, and look into his own website, his own awards and accolades listed on there. And you may be shocked, as I was, to find out that not that deep of a dive and not even digging that deep, what we find. And it's pretty concerning to me, but I want to find out what you think. Is this the type of lawyer you would want to hire if you had criminal charges against you? And is he actually qualified for this case? I've gotten a ton of questions additionally about what I would do differently in defending Lori Vallow or somebody charged with first-degree murder like Lori Vallow was if I was her attorney. So if you want to hear a video like that, make sure you leave the emoji with the sunglasses in the comments so that I can bring Big George on, who would handle that kind of case in our firm. If there was a big, high-profile first-degree murder case, I'd bring Big George in with me. We would handle that together to bring as much firepower as we possibly could for our client. So I would have him break that down with me. So if you want to see it, if you want Big George to come on and talk about it, leave the emoji with the sunglasses down in the comments, and we'll talk about what we would do on a first-degree murder case similar to Lori Vallow's. But today we're going to dive in to Mark Means. Who is this guy and what does he do? Well, we know he's a lawyer in Idaho. He's barred. He went to law school, went to good accredited law schools in undergrad. No issues with his education. But when we look at what he actually holds himself out to be, that's where the first moment of concern comes. And I saw a lot of comments and a lot of people ask me, he's a civil lawyer. He's way out of his league in this case. He can't handle criminal cases. He doesn't know what he's doing. He certainly shouldn't have such a high-profile first-degree murder case. And I push back on that a little bit, because just because someone is a civil lawyer doesn't mean they can't also handle criminal cases. Now, I have an issue when somebody handles everything in every type of law, because I do think you should specialize in 1, 2, or maybe 3 areas. So somebody that does civil litigation can also do criminal defense, just like yours truly. I do a majority of personal injury cases, but I do still handle a small share of criminal cases, and our firm is very picky and selective with the criminal cases that we handle. It's a much lower volume than our civil litigation department. So Mark Means could be a similar lawyer. But in order to find out what a lawyer does, what he specializes in, and what he holds himself out to be, the first place to check is simply his website. It's 2021. This stuff updates every single day. I was intricately involved in the design and the production of our website, so I know all about this, and I'm going to break down exactly what's in his website and what it should mean. And then when we dig a little deeper, let's see what it actually means. All right, so when you find meanslaw.com, this is Mark Means' website. So the first thing we're going to notice is, everybody's got their mission statement: honest treatment, clear advice, smart strategies. Great. We'll mention one of his other slogans later that's a little more interesting. But let's first, before we get into his awards and accolades, let's just click About and scroll down and see the areas of practice that he focuses on: criminal law, personal injury, business litigation, family law and domestic law, and mediation. So he's got 5 different areas. Mediation is not really its own area, but it seems like he may be a certified mediator, and that's something he focuses on. But he does have personal injury, and he does have criminal defense, and he has family law. Those are 3 of the biggest areas. So at least he lists the fact that he does do criminal defense on his website. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. We're going to find more information out later that may either corroborate or totally contradict this list of practice areas. So the next thing we're going to click is back to the homepage so we can see what he's about. What kind of a lawyer is he? Is he competent? Is he board certified? What type of awards or accolades has he gotten? And we see a list of awards and accolades in the middle of his homepage. And the first one I want to point out, we just heard what his practice areas are, is the ISB, the Idaho State Bar Family Law section. So the state bar, everyone can get in it. You just pay your dues. You apply. If you're accredited, if you've passed the bar in that state, you're a member of that state bar. So it doesn't take anything to be a member of the Idaho State Bar. But you actually get to select what practice area or what section you want to be in. And what that section means, a lot of non-lawyers don't know this, is you can go to the continuing legal education in those sections. You can become a leader in that section. Your practice area is usually focused on that section, and that's the information you want to get in the emails and the newsletters, whatever they send out. You're a part of that section. I'm in the civil trial law, personal injury type section of the Florida Bar. That's what I focus on. My dad is in the criminal law section of the Florida Bar. Mark Means is in the family law section. That doesn't necessarily corroborate that he does criminal defense, but like we said, doesn't mean he can't do it. This is just another indication that he focuses on family law. There will be more. Next, we see Avo, 5 stars. AV preeminent ranking of Martindale Hubbell, which is as high as you can get. It is the best rating. We have Super Lawyers, which is another great one. We've got Best Lawyers. We've got Idaho Trial Lawyers Association and Avo 10.0 superb rating, and the Idaho Mediation Association. So of these awards, let's cross a couple off. Idaho State Bar, we already talked about. Everybody in Idaho can be in that. Idaho Mediation Association, that's just something that once you're a certified mediator, you can get into that. Idaho Trial Lawyers Association, again, that's just something that you join. It's not necessarily hard or selective on being part of the Idaho Trial Lawyers Association. You usually just apply and pay, and then you can go to the meetings, go on the retreats, do things like that. So those three are just kind of like every lawyer in Idaho could be in those three, so we'll put them to the side. And now let's dig in just a little bit on these other awards, because you may not know out there that there are websites for each one of these awards, and you can search to see if the lawyers are actually what they say they are in these groups. Let's start with Avo. Avo is just a rating system for lawyers, and the way they get what your rating is, it's on a scale of 1 to 10, and 1 star to 5 stars is how they can kind of rate you as a lawyer, and that's based on client reviews, lawyer reviews, also known as peer reviews, and judges in the area. People can talk about how you practice law. You can upload your cases, some results in there. You put in your education. You put in your other awards. You put in where you've been a leader, if you've been on the bar committee making the rules for your state, if you've been the leader in your state bar association, if you've been a chair of a committee. All those type of things you put into Avo, puts them all together, and pops out your Avo rating. So Mark is a 10.0 Avo rated lawyer and a 5-star Avo rated lawyer, or so his website says. Let's click Avo and look at his profile. Mark Leroy Means in the picture looks like the same guy. Education seems like the same guy. Means Law seems like the same law firm. So one thing I want to point out is I'm not guaranteeing any of this is correct. I'm just saying based on the search of his name on these sites, this is what I find. If I was a client, this is what I would find doing a little research. First off, he has 73 reviews, and he is a 4.5-star lawyer based on those reviews, not the full 5-star like he posted on his website. Not as concerning, but what is concerning is the 10.0 Avo rating is the highest you can get. It is the perfect score. It is the top echelon of lawyers, but Mark is a 7.5 Avo rating, not a 10. That's really concerning. Now, this could have changed since he put it on his website. I will say some lawyers create their website and don't look at it for years, which is not advisable, but it does happen. So if this is just outdated, that's one thing, and we'll talk about it again later when we talk about some of the dates that are on some of these awards. But as we look right now, he's putting himself out there as a 10.0 rated lawyer when in reality he's a 7.5. Now, another thing I want to point out is his slogan on here. Don't get thrown under the bus. Contact us today to protect your rights. Now, I'm told that can have some kind of relation back to some quotes made in the Lori Vallow case by her brother, who said, "I can't believe our sister threw you under the bus." So this is a slogan here now on his Avo that he chose. And that's another thing is you can create, and most lawyers do create, or somebody in their firm creates their profiles on all these pages. You get to pick the next thing we're going to talk about, which is your practice areas and what percentage of your practice is based on these areas. Let's look at what Mark says. Personal injury, 30%. Family law, 25%. Divorce and separation, which is also family law, another 25%. Child custody, which is still family law, another 10%. Mediation, 5%. Contracts and agreements, 5%. So if we total up family law, that is 60% of his practice, which is corroborating the fact that he is part of the family law section of the Idaho Bar. And what we don't see on here in this pie chart or listed by him as a practice area is criminal defense. Not listed anywhere on his Avo profile. And just to give you an indication of what other Avo profiles look like, let's just type in our firms here. I'll type in Tragos, which will give you Peter Leo George Tragos. Some people could say this is total false advertising. Look at that picture. That's not me. It actually is me, just with short hair and no beard. But if you look, rating 10.0, the Avo star rating is 5 stars. And if you look at my practice areas, 75% personal injury. That's what I set myself out to be. Then 10% employment and labor. We used to do some wage and overtime. We don't do as much of it anymore. 5% construction and development. I had a couple construction defect claims, and 10% criminal defense. Now, if I was going to go update this today, I would probably put 90% personal injury, 10% criminal defense. I would cut the other 2 practice areas out because since we've gotten busier and grown, we really don't do that as much. But we put it out there in case we get a case or 2 that we're selective of and want to take. Like I said, it's not an exact science. It's not going to be perfect. Every lawyer is not going to have exactly what they have. So I wanted to just put out there and show you this is what mine looks like. It's a little out of date as you can see the picture, but it's still a 10.0, still 5 stars, still what I hold myself out to do as a personal injury lawyer. And that is very important. Real quick, since I saw my dad's up there, let's click his real quick. Again, 90% criminal defense, 10% personal injury, 10.0 AVO rating, 5-star AVO review. These aren't doctored. I'm just doing this search as we speak, kind of live. I've looked at Mark Means already. I don't even know what ours are going to look like on these profiles. So let's look at the next one, which is Super Lawyers. On his website, listed that he is in Super Lawyers. We've talked about the different awards and accolades you can get as a lawyer. Some of them you just pay for, but some of them you actually have to be selected, and Super Lawyers is one of those. They do a peer review where they actually talk to other lawyers in your area. They ask them what type of lawyer you are. They ask them to give you a rating. They ask other clients. They look into your cases. You can't just be a super lawyer because you want to or you pay a fee. You actually have to be selected by that group to be a super lawyer. So when I type in, and I'm trying to be as vague as possible to pull all data I possibly can about any lawyer named Means in the state of Idaho to see if he is a super lawyer. And when I click find lawyers, it tells me there are no lawyers that match this result. Am I spelling it wrong? I double checked. It looks like I'm spelling it right. I can't find his name anywhere listed in super lawyers for the state of Idaho. Now, just to make sure that there's not something wrong with my search bar, I'm going to type in Tragos, which is me in the state of Florida. If you look here, the 3 lawyers named in my firm, Pete Sardis, George Tragos, and Peter Tragos, all associated with the last name Tragos for obvious reasons, are all listed as super lawyers, as top-rated lawyers with our law firm. And as you can look, if you want to look to the right, Pete and my dad are super lawyers. I am a rising star super lawyer based on my age and number of practice years. It is basically the young lawyers that are coming up as super lawyers, all listed in super lawyers just by a simple search of Tragos in Florida. When we look for Mark, we don't find him anywhere. Lastly, we're going to look at the Martindale-Hubbell ratings. This is one of the harder ones to get, the AV preeminent rating, which is the highest rating you can get. Again, peer-reviewed. They look into you. They do some interviews. They make sure that you are a lawyer they want to have, and then they pick you and list you in the Martindale-Hubbell AV rated list. So let's go to that website. Now, I do want to point out that there are some dates here for Martindale-Hubbell 2015 and 2017 on here, and we're just going to search today. I don't know if he was listed back in 2017. He may have been. He does have the date on that one. Now, I don't see a date on Best Lawyers. I don't see a date on AVO. I don't see a date on Super Lawyers, so I don't know what's going on there, but I do see a date here. But let's look if he's actually still an AV preeminent rated lawyer. All right, so we have found Mark Leroy Means on Martindale-Hubbell. There are no peer reviews, no client reviews. It seems to be him based on where he went to undergrad, where he went to law school, where he was admitted, and the state that he's admitted, which is Idaho. Now, one thing that's interesting about this that I want to point out, I don't see the AV preeminent rating, which is like the 5-star rating. I don't see that anywhere. Again, I could be missing it, but I'm just a potential client looking at it, or even a lawyer who knows how to navigate these websites. I can't find him anywhere here. Not in 2017, not now in 2021. But what's interesting is we can then go down and look at the areas of practice he has listed or checked off, or somebody for him who knows him, who has done some research, has checked off 13 areas of practice. Let's look at them real quick. Administrative law, civil practice, wills, contracts, alternative dispute resolution, environmental law, family law, mediation, personal injury, divorce and separation, business law, trusts and estates, and child custody. There are even some practice areas listed on here that are not even on his website, like the wills and the trusts and stuff like that. But what we don't see again is criminal defense listed anywhere on his Martindale-Hubbell profile. Now, I'm not saying he made this profile, but whoever was looking into him didn't find a single bit of evidence that he was a criminal defense lawyer. That would be concerning to me if I was a potential client. Now, just to make sure we're doing this properly, let's search Tragos. And this is not some brag video for me to say how great I am. These just happen to be the things that he listed, and I know about them because we're part of them. We're in contact with these websites and we know how it works. So first we see Peter Tragos right here. So let's click it. Peter Tragos, click my profile. No reviews by clients, no reviews by peer. I don't really update this. This is not one of the ones I'm going after, which is fine. You got to pick and choose. You can't be a member of all of them, but I am not AV preeminent rated. I do not have this listed as me. We have it in our firm and you'll see why, but I am not one of these. 2013, graduated. That's when I started practicing. Areas of practice. If we scroll down, I didn't set this, so I don't even know how they came up with it, but here it is. Criminal defense, personal injury, construction, employment, and labor. You can understand where they got all those. I have practiced in all those areas. That's what's listed on Avo. Most of those are listed on my website, so you can see how they found those areas. But real quick, let's just scroll down and see why we are AV preeminent rated, which is the other Tragos, George Tragos. There's that AV badge that shows you he is that 5-star kind of lawyer. You see the peer reviews, you see the client reviews, you see when he was barred, and then you see his areas of practice again: criminal defense, criminal appeals, criminal fraud, mail fraud, federal crimes, post-conviction, grand jury, and personal injury. All areas of practice that he does handle. That's why I want to show you our profiles, which are updated properly and are listed properly on our website, and most lawyers are. It's just kind of crazy that I did this somewhat deep dive on Mark Means, and I can't find him anywhere on these websites. Nothing matches up with what his website says. And that's concerning to me, but I want to know from you. What do you think about this deep dive? Does that concern you at all about Mark Means? Is he in over his head? You tell me. He could be a very competent civil litigator and be able to pick up and handle this criminal case. I'm not saying he's disqualified or unqualified or it's impossible for him to handle this case. I'm not going to say that. I do have a problem with him setting himself out to be something that he's not on his website. That is something I take issue with as a profession of ethics, who gets a bad name from a lot of lawyers who post stuff that's not true. So that's what I take exception to. I don't necessarily know if this lets me know if he is capable of handling this case or not. Now, if I do a deep dive into what he's done and I find out he's made a lot of mistakes through this case, that might change my opinion. And again, let me know if you want me to do that video by putting the emoji with the sunglasses in the comments so we can know you want more of this. Don't forget to subscribe to our page so you don't miss any future videos, and like this video if you like this content. We'll be back with you next time. Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.